Hi, welcome to this week's video. Well, we've made it to 2017, and as we transition from one year into another, there's going to be TV shows and newspaper articles and magazine articles looking back on the prior year and talking about highlights. There will be stories about, weather stories of 2016 and sports highlights of 2016 and business highlights and, of course, political highlights. And that's all fine. That's kind of normal, going from one year into another, transitioning that way and looking back and looking at some of the high points of last year. So I kind of want to keep that theme going for this week's video. However, I'm going to touch upon three different topics. There could be hundreds to choose from. There's three topics I want to talk about because I believe they will bleed over and carry over into 2017. Now the first one I want to talk about was from April or May of 2016, and that was the Panama Papers. Now, if you remember that, this was a law firm in Panama that helped world leaders basically siphon money out of their countries. This is what the paper said, and what the report was, that they would siphon off money for their own personal use. They put away money for their own personal use, for themselves and their families, and so on and so forth. And when the Panama Papers came out, what it did, it named names. One of the names that it came out with was the leader of Russia, Putin. It said that he had siphoned off, $21 billion for himself and his family and kind of put it away. And why this becomes a big thing for me, we didn't talk about it much into the summer and the fall. It was kind of a big news and a big splash. And we knew there was corruption around the world with world leaders. But now we had some facts. We had a law firm that had documentation on it. And then it kind of just died away and people stopped talking about it. But here's my concern and why I think it carries over into this year. When you have a world leader like that, and he's not the only one, there's other world leaders out there, but the power behind Russia, with the connections they have with Iran and Syria, even possibly North Korea, China, they are connected so globally, and you have someone who has so much power, he's not going to be afraid to do things. And he's going to take risk and possibly even put his own country into a position that other world leaders may not, because he has nothing to lose. He has a nest egg. He has a safety net. So he knows personally he's going to be okay. And my concern is when you have a leader like that, how far will he push the envelope? What will it look like in 2017? We have other stories of Russia with their building bases in Syria for air bases and helicopters, and they rearmed their nuclear submarines. They are doing things that are long term, and they're doing things that can cause a lot of tension. And if you have no fear, as a leader like that, if things get too chaotic, he has a nest egg for him and his family and whoever else he's going to share that with. So that, I think, can carry over, just the mindset with what's going to happen. And again, Putin's not the only world leader that was mentioned in the Panama Papers. Now, the second one that I want to talk about, it still carries over, is Christians. Christians, especially in Iraq. It was just released that there were 90,000 Christians that were put to death in 2016. Now, just to kind of wrap your mind around that, that would be one Christian every 6 minutes that was put to death for their faith. And there's a group of Christians in Iraq, and now you know about ISIS and the stories about ISIS and what happened with Iraq and the believers there. If ISIS knocked on your door, if you're a Christian in Iraq, and ISIS knocked on your door, and you would not renounce your faith, but you kept your faith, they would put an N on your door or on your wall. They would mark you. The N stood for Nazarene, which meant Christian. And there's a website now, and there's a movement that says, we are N. N is the Aramaic letter for Christian. It's pronounced, when it says we are N, it's pronounced none, as is N-U-N. But it's we are N. And if you go to that website, there's a video on there. And there's Christians who are dressed in white, and they form a letter N, and they're proud of their faith. And they look in the camera and they say, they may kill us, they may torture us, they may come and take our sons and our daughters, and they may kill them too, but they can never kill our faith. And we look at these men and these women, knowing the torturous situation they live in, knowing what's happened to the Christians, the persecution, and to have them stand strong for their faith. That is something that is just inspirational. I don't care what your background is, to see someone who is that solidly committed to their faith, it's amazing. And I don't want that story to end. And I think what's happening as we go into 2017, we don't know how strong ISIS is going to be. We don't know what's going to continue. But I think the persecution of Christians continues. And we all can learn a lesson, especially those living here in America. We have so much stuff and we're so selfish. To understand that there are believers out there who are willing to give their lives because they know that no matter who it is, no one can steal their faith. That's not a story I want to see end in 2016. And the third thing is there was a book that came out last year, and I was really surprised that it didn't carry more emphasis with it. It's called The Confession of Congressman X. Now, this is just a small little paperback. It's 84 pages, and what this is a congressman who had a friend, and they would meet for dinner or so every couple of months in D.C., and his friend would just kind of talk. And, you know, when two friends get together and you trust each other, you just open up and you share what's going on in your heart. There's no press. There's no one there to impress. It's just you and a buddy. And this congressman was very truthful about what Congress was like and what D.C. is like and behind the scenes. And his friend took notes. And after a while, he approached the congressman. And he said, here's the things that, from our conversations over the last few years, things that you've said, we should publish this. And the congressman got so upset, he felt betrayed. He didn't know he was writing these things down. He didn't know he was making a documentation of their conversation. It was just one trusted friend to another having a conversation over dinner and drinks. This congressman wouldn't talk to his friend for 6 months. He was so upset. And then one day he opened up the notebook and he read the notes that his friend took, and they were correct. What he wrote, he captured his thoughts in his heart. So he gave him permission to go ahead and publish this book. And again, it's just 84 pages. And when it came out, I thought all kinds of people would be talking about it because it's so raw and open, but it didn't get any kind of play. And really, to understand this, now all we know is that he is from the Democratic Party. He's a Democrat. We don't know if he's current or past. We don't know his present. He wouldn't give his name because he didn't want any retribution against himself or his fellow congressmen. But I want to share to you some excerpts, some things that he said. Again, this is a congressman in D.C. every couple of months having dinner and drinks with a trusted friend. These are some of the quotes from the book. He says, many of my colleagues are dishonest career politicians who revel in the power and special interest money that is lavish upon them. Now we look at Congress, and we look at our political leaders, and we know there's corruption. We talk about it, but now you have somebody on the inside, again, admitting it. And you have President Trump coming in a few weeks, we'll call him that, and he wants to drain the swamp, and what's going to happen in 2017, it's very interesting, because if this is what's happening, then we need a change. He says, again, quoting, he says, my main job is to keep my job. To get reelected, it takes precedence over everything, just to keep my job. He says, voters are incredibly ignorant and know little about our form of government and how it works. He says, it's far easier than you think to manipulate a nation of naive, self-absorbed sheep who crave instant gratification. That's how our Democratic Congress looks at us. He says, fundraising is so time-consuming, I seldom read any bills I vote on. Like many of my colleagues, I don't know how the legislation will be implemented or what it will cost. Again, he says, we spend money we don't have and mortgage the future with a wink and a nod. He says, screw the next generation. It's about getting credit now, looking good for the upcoming election. What do you think about these comments? Again, one congressman just to a friend. He says, most of my colleagues want to help the poor and disadvantaged. To a point. We certainly don't want to live among them or mingle with them unless it's for a soup kitchen photo op, he says. Poverty is a great concern as long as it's kept at a safe distance. And the last quote I'll share with you, he says, our party used to be a strong advocate, again, the Democrats, used to be a strong advocate for the working class. We still pretend to be, but we aren't. Large corporations and public unions grease the palms of those who have the power to determine winners and losers. the confession of Congressman X. If that's what our public leaders are like here in America, and you have leaders around the world, the Panama Papers said we have corruption around the world, where does our world go in 2017? You know, that's why it's important that you're watching these videos, that you're understanding what's happening, you understand the times and the day that you live in. You know, hey, I'm Pastor Dave. That's all the time I have for this week. If you want more information, please go to the website. It's called interpretingthetimes.com. That's all one word if you Google it. interpretingthetimes.com. Would love to have your thoughts and your feedback. I look forward to being back with you again next week. So between now and then, Happy New Year, and God bless you.